Hey guys, Sean here. Welcome to the F1 Word and to the preview for the 2022 Austrian Grand Prix. And for the first time since 2019, we are only getting the one event at the Red Bull Ring. But because it is the second sprint weekend of the season, we're still getting two races, which is absolutely fine by me. I really do like this track, I honestly do, and we've seen some pretty good racing here over the years, and you know, if we get a Grand Prix that is half as good as last weekend's race, we're going to be in for an absolute cracker. Lots to get through in this preview, so let's jump straight into it, then kicking things off as we always do with a look at the usual track stats and all the juicy stuff that follows. So last time out, F1 was at Silverstone for a thrilling British Grand Prix. What a race. I am still not over it. But now it's on to Austria for round 11 of the championship season. A lap of the Red Bull Ring is one of the shortest on the calendar at 4.318 kilometers, which is just over 2.6 miles if you prefer, and is made up of just 10 corners. That is 7 to the right and 3 to the left, and come Sunday, we should see a total of 71 racing laps. Now, although the circuit is pretty good for overtaking, that will be helped further with 3 DRS zones this weekend. The first is a long run and it runs between turns 1 and 3, with the second between turns 3 and 4, and the final zone runs down that start-finish straight. And with all 3 zones having their own detection points, we might see a little bit of squabbling over DRS once again, which is always a lot of fun. Aston Martin say, by the way, worth noting that 90% of overtakes in Austria take place into or out of turns 3 and 4. The race lap record is held by Carlos Sainz, who posted a 105.619 in 2020, and last year's fastest lap of the race was a 106.2 dead, and that was set by Max Verstappen on his way to a pretty comfortable victory, finishing almost 18 seconds up the road from Valtteri Bottas, with Lando Norris taking the final step on the podium. That final step on the podium being P3, of course, 3 being the magic number and Daniel Ricciardo's number. And actually, Wikipedia describes the number as the natural number following 2 and preceding 4, and is the smallest odd prime number. But in F1 terms, 3 is also one less than the number of wheels on an F1 car. Yes, it's tyre talk time. I am so sorry. These segues are getting worse. Anyway, last time out, it was all about the hardest tyres, but this weekend it's the other end of the scale, because the compounds available for Austria are actually the softest in the Pirelli range, and they are the hard C3, the medium C4, and the soft C5. The track surface is quite low on grip, but the tyres don't get pushed to the limit like they do at tracks like Silverstone, for example, hence why they've taken the softest tyres this time around. As you'd expect, with the long straights into tight corners, braking and traction are key, and so to quote Mario Isola, maintaining the performance of the rear tyres throughout the lap is also vital to ensure adequate traction. The nomination should give us a variety of strategies on Sunday, and last year's winning strategy was a 2-stopper, with Max Verstappen starting on the C4 mediums and then completing the race with 2 stints on the C3 hards. It is a sprint weekend, so a reminder that the tyre allocation is slightly different in Austria, with the drivers getting 12 sets consisting of 2 hards, 4 mediums and 6 softs. And for those interested, pit lane lost time excluding a stop is around about 17 or 18 seconds, so with last year's fastest stop being 2.1 seconds, you're looking at around about a 20-second loss in the pit lane, perhaps slightly more due to the bigger, heavier wheels this year. Then again, last weekend's fastest stop was a 2.4, so there's not much in it despite the new wheels. The safety car is one of the things that could easily mix things up a little bit, and since its return to the calendar back in 2014, the Red Bull Ring has featured a full or virtual safety car period in 60% of the races held, which according to Aston Martin is around about in line with the average for the season. As well as safety cars, weather could easily play its part as well, and as was the case last time out, there is a lingering threat of rain, but the weekend is, at time of recording at least, expected to stay mostly dry. Friday is currently forecast to hit highs of 20 degrees with a very low risk of rain, with Saturday expected to stay dry all day with highs of 22 degrees for the start of the sprint. And that's about as hot as it's going to get, because on Sunday temperatures are currently expected to hit around 20 degrees for the start, and the chance of rain currently sits at around 10%. Like I say, it's a low risk, but once again the threat is there. And as always, you know what's coming. That is the forecast at time of recording, so plenty of time for that to change between now and the weekend. And your schedule for the weekend is once again the usual European times, but it is slightly different than usual due to that sprint on Saturday. FP1 will, as ever, kick the weekend off on Friday from 12:30 p.m. BST, but it's qualifying on Friday afternoon from 4 p.m, and that, just as a reminder, sets the grid for the sprint. FP2 is on Saturday morning at 11:30 a.m, and a reminder that both practice sessions are still just the 1 hour long on a sprint weekend, they're not extended. The sprint itself gets going from 3:30 p.m, and the result of that sets the grid for the race, and it is lights out for the race on Sunday at 2 p.m, and once again that is in UK time. Now, before I get on to the flashback and make some probably terrible predictions, let's have a look at a few of the news stories and talking points doing the rounds ahead of this weekend's Austrian Grand Prix. First up, ahead of the race in Austria, teams and Formula One management and the FIA are set to meet to discuss a number of topics, including the impact of inflation on the cost cap and the 2026 engine regulations. Keep an eye out for that one, but it now appears the topic of the FIA's decision to intervene on the bouncing we've seen this season is also set to be brought up. Why? Well, according to Motorsport.com, it is understood that a number of teams are unhappy that the governing body has stepped in and issued 2 technical directives. On top of that, some are not comfortable that there is room for the FIA to have an influence over how teams set up their cars, with one unnamed team boss quoted as saying, "What will be next? A wet track metric that forces us to change from slicks to inters when a certain amount of rain has fallen." And Red Bull boss Christian Horner feels that it is important everyone talks through why the technical directives were issued, but added that he does not believe the intervention was needed, as based on the British Grand Prix, teams are sorting it out. And even Mercedes, who many will argue have had it the worst, are unsure whether the FIA really needed to get involved, with Andrew Shovlin saying, quote, "The point that we've made to the FIA, and we are very supportive of their efforts, is that we will fix these problems for our own performance," adding, again, quote, "To be honest, the metric that the FIA is doing is not a particular distraction to us." It's not just that, though, because a knock-on consequence of the FIA's analysis on the bouncing is that there is now a move to clamp down on tricks some teams are believed to be using, namely flexible floors. There are suspicions that some cars feature more flexible floors and planks, which allows them to run close to the ground, which obviously gains them more performance, and the governing body is expected to police that more heavily from the French Grand Prix later this month. And Aston Martin's Mike Crack says his team was unaware rivals were employing floor flexing techniques, insisting it's something that needs to be clarified. Of course, Toto Wolff at the weekend calling it a shocker when revelations came to light. Aston were one of the teams to crank up the ride height of its cars, and Crack admits that the news gave the team an idea around how it might be able to find performance while controlling bouncing and porpoising, stating, quote, "Yeah, it gives us a hint, and we need to see with Andrew Green and the guys if we're exploring everything we can there." It is also worth noting that he will give his support to the technical directive suggestion of rule changes for 2023 on safety grounds, and Gunther Steiner indicated at Silverstone that some teams have already, I suppose you could say, preempted this, and are working on changes that might be adopted by the FIA next season, which would give them an advantage as they prepare for 2023. And if these two stories don't warrant a watch this space from me, then I don't know what does. And finally, let's wrap up 3 stories that you may have missed post-Silverstone. Zhou Guanyu has said that the Halo saved his life during his huge crash at Sunday's British Grand Prix. The Alfa Romeo driver attended the medical centre once he had been extracted from the car, but was soon discharged and declared fit to race. And Zhou praised the marshals and the medical team before giving thanks to F1 and the FIA for all the work they have done to improve safety in the sport. Zhou will be racing in Austria this weekend, saying he is keener than ever to get back on track and that he is fit and looking forward to the weekend. And just very quickly, at time of recording, it sounds like all drivers involved in the accident will be racing this weekend. If that changes, though, as always, I'll pop a link in the description and in the comments explaining more. Gunther Steiner wants the pressure to be kept off Mick Schumacher after he picked up his first ever points on Sunday. Speaking to Motorsport.com, the Haas boss said that the 8th place finish will give him a boost in confidence, but he does not want that to lead to a load of pressure being put on Schumacher, adding that the expectation should not be that he scores every race. And Daniel Ricciardo admits that something felt off with his McLaren during what he described as a pretty sad race. Ricciardo suffered a DRS failure, the flap being stuck open, which forced him to pit for a second time just 12 laps into his hard tyre stint, and once back in the race, he couldn't use the system anymore. That wasn't all, though, as the McLaren driver explained he struggled with a lack of grip at the restart and was getting eaten up by the pack, and unfortunately that resulted in his pace being the way it was for the whole of the Grand Prix. Let's move on then, and it's time to take a look at a classic race in Austria, and I wasn't really sure which one to pick for this because I've seen so many great races over the years, but following that first lap incident for Sergio Perez and his drive back through the field to P2, I thought I'd take some, let's say, inspiration from that, so let's flash back to the 1999 Austrian Grand Prix. It was the first race since Silverstone where Michael Schumacher, of course, broke his leg, and so Mika Salo stepped in to partner Eddie Irvine, Ferrari's new #1 driver. But it was Mika Häkkinen who would start the race on pole position. And I've got to say, following Schumacher's accident, I think many, including me, expected him to start running away with the title from Austria onwards. And whilst he got off the line well at the A1 ring and led the field away, it soon all fell apart. The Finn's teammate David Coulthard went for a move up the inside of turn 2, hit Häkkinen and sent him into a spin and dropping him to last place. And whilst, as a Schumacher fan, I couldn't appreciate it at the time, that led to one hell of a comeback drive from the Finn. By lap 26, Häkkinen was up to 5th place, a fair way off the leaders, but back in contention for some decent points. And I will say as well, by lap 26, I think there'd only been 2 retirements. So that was all done through overtakes and pit stops. He soon took P4 from Heinz-Harald Frentzen and later on took 3rd from Rubens Barrichello, where he would remain until the end of the race. At the front, though, Irvine took the lead after Coulthard and Barrichello pitted, and he began pumping in some strong laps as his car was light on fuel. He eventually pitted 6 laps after McLaren and Stewart made their stops and came out in the lead just ahead of Coulthard. The two of them then engaged in a tense battle to the end of the Grand Prix for the second race in a row, actually, running almost nose to tail right to the flag. Irvine just about clung on though and took his second career victory, crossing the line just 0.3 of a second ahead of the McLaren, with Mika Häkkinen 22 seconds further back in 3rd, having made up 19 places since that first lap incident. Now, obviously, as a Schumacher fan, 1999 was a very tough year, but as a neutral, it was actually an incredible season full of surprises, action, drama, controversy, and even the threat of a title challenge from Heinz-Harald Frentzen in the Jordan. It's a season I always recommend because I don't think it gets enough love, so it is well worth a watch if you've never seen it and if you can find a review online. Give it a watch, definitely. Right then, time for me to make some predictions, and as always, please don't take these too seriously. They are just a little bit of fun, and if you do disagree with my picks, then you can let me know yours in the comment section down below. I have no idea why I did it like that. Let's just move on. And my picks for Silverstone were, well, pretty poor, surprisingly, I know, yeah. Anyway, I honestly never saw Sainz taking pole, and I don't think anybody could have predicted that race, but hey, at least I got 2 things right, so thank you, Lewis Hamilton. This week, I'm going to go all in on Red Bull. Don't get me wrong, Ferrari will absolutely still be right up there and it should be a good close fight. And if Mercedes has got on top of their issues and the improvement wasn't just specific to Silverstone, they could get in the mix as well. And yes, I would love 3 teams to be fighting it out for pole and the win. And actually, on the subject of Mercedes, I do want to quickly say it's going to be really interesting to see if those improvements were just down to Silverstone being a smoother ride, or if they finally resolve the problems with bouncing. It's a big test for them in Austria, and without trying to make it sound more dramatic than it maybe is, it could determine how much they focus on 2022 for the rest of the season. Obviously, they're not going to give up completely, but you know what I mean. But honestly, Red Bull seem to have the best package at the moment, and that's at most tracks. I mean, without damage, I'm pretty sure Max Verstappen would have disappeared and cruised to victory last time out. Of course, we'll never find out, but he looked like he could do that. He'd been quick all weekend. They've also got a pretty strong record at the circuit, winning 4 of the last 6 races, including both the Austrian and Styrian Grand Prix last year. So, yeah, I'm picking Verstappen for pole on Friday. He also took both poles at the track last year, by the way, and say that he goes on to win the sprint race as well and takes the Grand Prix victory proper on Sunday. Sergio Perez and Charles Leclerc also have some recent solid form at the Red Bull ring, so I'm going to put those 2 on the podium with Checo making it a Red Bull 1-2. Mercedes are once again the obvious podium outsiders, and Carlos Sainz will be on a high following his win at Silverstone. So Verstappen, Perez and Leclerc is my top 3, but it's going to be fascinating. And if we get some drama and well-timed safety cars or whatever, don't rule out Hamilton, Russell or Sainz. And you know, seeing as podium outsider is most weeks going to be Mercedes, I'm going to swap to a team to watch instead for this week. And I've gone with Alpine because Fernando Alonso has been on good form and got that top 5 at Silverstone. And prior to his retirement, Esteban Ocon was going well and looking good for points. I really do think they could overtake McLaren for P4 in standing soon. They seem to be making some good progress this year, Alpine. And if things get spicy at the front, they might be able to snatch another great result. Plus, their updates do, based on one weekend anyway, seem to be working well. As for some bolder predictions, I'm going with Zhou Guanyu taking a top 8 finish. Perfect way to come back after that huge crash on Sunday, but maybe double points for Alfa this weekend. I'll go with Mick Schumacher outperforming Magnussen in the race, even if it's not for points. And yeah, go on then. Nicholas Latifi makes it out of Q1 once again. Definitely the driver of Saturday for me last weekend. I'm really looking forward to this one. I don't know why. Maybe it's because Austria is usually always a fun race. But anyway, that is it for the Austrian Grand Prix preview then. But you can let me know your thoughts and your predictions ahead of the weekend in the comment section down below. Now, I will be back on Sunday shortly after the race with the usual reaction live stream, but in the meantime, if you did enjoy this one, then please do leave a like, as it really does help the channel out, and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss out on any future videos or streams. But as ever, thank you for watching. I've been Sean, this has been the F1 Word, and until next time, goodbye.